And joining us now to break down the effect that Operation Epic Fury could have on China are our panelists, Keith Naughton, co-founder and principal at Silent Majority Strategies, and Rod D. Martin, foreign policy analyst and CEO of Martin Capital. Keith, Rod, thanks so much for joining us today. And I do want to jump right in. Some have called Iran a proxy of China, and of course China's going through its own, perhaps parallel downfall, some commentators believe. Just to start with you, Keith, how do you see that relationship?
Well, I think it's a close relationship. I think that Iran does act independently quite often. I view it more as Iran being sort of an occasional cat's paw of China. But they do engage in activity that is not helpful to China. Closing up the strait also shuts off imports from Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. There's also damage to Chinese investments in that region. I think it's humiliating for China that they really can't do anything about what's going on there. So the Iranians have kind of dragged them into this politically. So I think it's harmful to China. It's embarrassing to China. But for the most part, I think everyone would be better off if this regime were knocked out and you could have a more peaceful Middle East.
All right. And Rod, I want to get your take on that, and also this particular squeeze on China due to the attack on Iran coming just weeks before an expected meeting between Trump and Xi, and your thoughts on that.
Well, first, I just want to say that you guys are doing a better job of covering this aspect of it than anybody I know. And I really appreciate that, because this is the bigger story. The bigger story, as important as Iran is on its own, as important as Venezuela and Cuba are on their own, the big story is Donald Trump's tightening the noose around China's ambitions to expand. Its desire to attack Taiwan, its honestly desire to absorb large chunks of the Russian Far East and Siberia, its play to be a true global superpower is all on the line here, and it floats on a sea of sanctioned oil. So much of China's oil, nearly half of China's oil, is sanctioned oil that they're getting at a steep discount. They're taking about 40% of Russia's total exports. They're taking 90% of Iran's total exports. They were taking a huge percentage of Venezuela's, and that's going away, partly because of what has now happened in Venezuela and is now happening in Iran, but also because of the growing interdiction of the shadow fleet tankers that carry that oil. Without that shadow fleet, this oil never gets to China. And we were talking about this earlier in the week, that India is now actually helping us stop these shadow fleet tankers. So China's in a bind here. This is actually a pretty large financial sum that they're not going to be able to count on going forward. And it reduces their unfair trade advantages, their ability to project power. Everything comes back to Beijing. And that has been the Trump administration's primary focus.
What kind of acute symptoms do you expect to see from this squeeze in China now, Rod?
Well, the biggest single thing is, you can become rich one way or another. You can increase your income or you can reduce your expenses. This is a huge increase in China's expenses in an economy that's already struggling. This is a country where nearly everybody has put their retirement savings into real estate. The real estate market has been just a catastrophe since before COVID, and it's only going to get worse because China is facing significant population declines over the next several decades that at this point are just irreversible. So if the foundation of your economy is something that is actually now depreciating, and you have your expenses increase on the production side dramatically, that's a pretty bleak outlook for the next 25 years.
Within that context, Keith, I don't know if you have thoughts on what Trump and Xi may be gunning for in their upcoming meeting in the context of this squeeze on China?
Well, it's a very tricky situation because the CCP and Xi have to do something to reassert themselves on the global stage. And we don't know what it's going to be because they've proven to be helpless with Venezuela. That could be excusable. It's right in America's backyard. We had a very limited operation. But now with Iran, with them not doing anything, they're proving to be the worst allies in the world. Nobody can count on them. So the CCP has to do something to reassert China on the world stage. And this Trump meeting is going to be very curious. Do they cut some kind of deal with him and are able to claim some type of triumph? Are they able to insert themselves as some type of mediator in some way in this conflict? Or do they do something more aggressive, like in the against the Philippines in that South China Sea, where they're illegally claiming thousands of square miles of territory? So it's kind of a dangerous time where they've got to do something. I agree with Rod. They've got significant economic pressures, and this oil discount that they've been riding on, that's just something on the top with tariffs and declining population and the real estate bubble bursting and the fact that their economy is probably overstated by at least 30%.
Yeah, the regime will need to address this lack of energy input very soon. Do you think the attack on Iran could end up pushing China toward sourcing that more from Russia? Keith?
Well, I think they'll try. I mean, there's limited infrastructure from Russia into China. So that's a challenge for them, and limited shipping capacity. I think they will try to do that. But as we've seen, that's not necessarily good for the Russians, by the way, because the Chinese have cut some pretty tough deals with the Russians. So I think if China is going to demand more Russian oil, it's going to create an additional tension point because the Chinese are going to want a good deal and the Russians are going to desperately need more cash. So I don't think it really pushes them together. I think it creates a new tension point for them.
And Rod, you rightly pointed to the urgency here, especially regarding the economy, and yet also that aspect of the regime's kind of being shown for what it is, not reliable as an ally. At this point, how is that going to impact all of its relationships around the world, considering that it really does need to build them up, and it's been trying to position itself as a strong mediator, as a peacemaker, and now it's sort of being shown as nothing?
It's somewhere between nothing and utterly unreliable. Yes, if you're banking on China to be your friend, you are absolutely out of luck. It's worse than that. One of their industries they're really trying to get going is arms sales. And what we've seen in Venezuela and now in Iran is that their weapons are junk. Their air defense systems are worthless. You might as well just not have spent your money. And the Russian systems are just as bad. Now, does that mean they can't hurt you on a given day? Well, no, of course not. But American technology is just leaps and bounds ahead, and we seem to know how to actually use what we have, which they are not proving to be able to do. So that puts another crimp in their style. They want to increase income through arms sales. Who's going to buy their stuff? And same thing for Russia. So I think what you're going to see happen is we're going to get to a negotiated peace in Ukraine. The president is highly committed to this. Don't know how long it's going to take, but you're going to get there. And the result of that will be the reintegration of Russia into the global system. They will resume proper oil and gas exports at market prices, which cuts China off from its supply. And they will be in a position where they have to buy everything on the open market. That potentially puts their economy into a recession by itself.
Yeah. Now, earlier today, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, said that the number of Iran's shots fired and one-way attack drones fell dramatically since the first days, 86% since the opening days of the assault. And one-way attack drones were down by 73%. Hegseth, when asked in that same meeting, said that there's no message for Russia and China in this conflict. But Keith, do you think what do you think they'll be reading into it?
Well, I think that's obviously good news. Iran has limited weaponry. They have limited ability to restock. I think they've been putting out this footage, and it's sort of like something out of the old Cold War where most of the footage is fake. It's a question of whether we've got the resolve to finish off the job with them. And it's a question of what is the resolution of the IRGC there and the fanatics in Iran to maintain their police state via violence and to continue this fight? And how long will that take? And what is their wherewithal? Those are unanswerable questions really right now. We won't know until that unfolds over the next couple of weeks. But I do think that we're going to see a continued degradation of the Iranians. Hopefully there will be a political change there, and they would accept a deal that would remove sanctions, bring them in the international community, and as a bargain, stop funding terrorism and stop funding their nuclear program. That would be hugely beneficial to the people of Iran. The last 40 years of policy by this fanatical regime have been a catastrophe for the people of Iran more than the rest of the Middle East.
And your final thoughts, Rod?
It cannot be stressed enough that there is hardly an armed conflict in the Middle East that isn't instigated, directed, funded, and armed by Iran. And as a result of that, if you shut off that problem, that cycle, that regime that is directing all these forces, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas, take your pick, if you shut that off, it reduces the need for American forces in the Middle East, which also means we can focus more on China. So all of this is bad for China. None of this is good. And even when the Iranians are kind of at cross purposes with China, they're at least making a mess for us, which helps China. That's about to go away.
All right. Great to have both of you on today and hear your insights. Keith Naughton and Rod Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you.